Hello everyone, and welcome to Soulful Thoughts from Ireland. I'm your host, Meghan, and I am currently in the sacred place of Glendalough in County Wicklow, the home of St. Kevin, who was a 6th century hermit, community and monastic founder, a being of gentle strength, and lover of all creation and every form of life. I have with me here today Father Michael Rodgers, the founder of the Tierman Sanctuary and Retreats located here in Glendalough. As we approach Samhain, the Celtic celebration of death and dying, the eve of October 31st, and the end of the Celtic year, I felt it most appropriate to speak with Michael as he is consciously approaching his own death journey as his current age asks of him. Welcome, Michael, and thanks for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you.
Christian tradition, the teaching that comes back to me again and again, is the kingdom of God is near at hand. And then we consider the ancient Celtic belief of the different dimensions of reality being right here, alongside. And for those with the vision to see and the openness of the heart to feel. Now, to me, both these Christian and Celtic traditions seem to be saying the same thing, that it's right here. It's right here with us. So I'm interested to know, how do you understand these teachings in relation to death and dying? And what is your belief of where we journey to?
It's a big question. And it will take me some time to answer it. But I believe that God is with us, of course, here, in the here and now. That's the incarnation story. That's the story that God is among us, that God has entered into our lives. And God is here to help us to establish the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is here and now. We've said that. So it's a great joy to be part of that, to realize that the kingdom of God is already here. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm continuing on the journey that I have already begun here, and I've already entered that journey of truth and life, holiness, grace, justice, love, and peace. That's the way the kingdom of God is described sometimes. So that's the story. I feel really good about travelling this journey and coming into the kingdom of God, into the kingdom maybe doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. The word kingdom, the reign of God, the way of God. I find so many different, try to find words, and you can't find words to express it. But I think we're on that way to eternity. It's every day. Every day is an eternal moment, and we're in eternity already. So to pass on from here to there, to me, doesn't seem to be such a terrible experience. It seems to be something to look forward to. So I think I would have inherited that from my ancestors and from the people who have gone before me, that they didn't make a big issue out of dying, out of coming towards the end of life. They just accepted what was going on at the moment and lived that as best they could, and then they were ready to go without too much fuss. And I think it still stays in my family. And my family, for example, they're all dead. I had two brothers and 2 sisters, and they're all dead. My parents, of course, are dead, and my aunts and uncles and my cousin, many of them. But here I am, just left on my own. But I'm quite pleased about that too, that I saw it through to the very end. And I'm following on a road that they travelled, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that's gone and joining with them.
No, you're fine. Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. And especially you're not going anywhere. You're here. You're already here. And following in the way of your ancestors. I think I remember going to John O'Donoghue's grave, and it says on the plaque there, which incorporates his father and his uncle and the family, saying, "They have not left us, they have just gone before us." And I think that something too, isn't it? The ancestors, how are they weaving their eternal lives in and through us here and now? And then how are our lives weaving in and through them? I think that is such a beautiful understanding. And of course, in the Christian tradition, I think we probably think more of it in the saints and the angels. But the Celtic tradition, I think, brings that ancestral.
While you were talking there, sometimes I find that the words are difficult to find. I love poetry. I love what the poet says. And I have a poem by Helen Waddell, who was a Presbyterian in the north of Ireland. She was a minister and she worked in Africa. And she wrote a little poem, "I shall not go to heaven when I die." So maybe I'll say a little bit of that, because I think it illustrates what I would love to say, but I couldn't say it in those words. "I shall not go to heaven when I die, but if they let me be, I think I'll take the road I used to know, that goes by Slieve-na-Garra and the sea. And all day breasting me the wind will blow, and I'll hear nothing but the peewits cry, and the sea talking in the caves below. I think it will be winter when I die, for no one from the north could die in spring, and all the heather will be dead and grey, and the bog cotton will have blown away, and there'll be no yellow on the wind. But I shall smell the peat, and when it's almost dark, I'll turn my feet to the white path glimmering to the hills, and see far up a light. Could it be that heaven would be so small a thing as a lit window on the heavens at night, and come stumbling in from the gloom, half blind, into a firelit room, and turn you and see you there, and there abide? If I could only have my way, and they would let me be, I almost wish it were tonight I died." That's Helen Waddell, and it's a lovely poem. The heaven is here, and even when we depart from here, we'll still be here. We'll still be able to. Gives me great consolation, or gives me great courage and hope, and just enjoyment, expectation.
Thank you. What a beautiful poem. Beautiful poem. It just captures, you can feel her love of being here. Yeah. And her complete sense of union of being here. And, not able to separate her life or her death from what is around. I love that. I love that. And I think that sort of reminds me of it, if I'm saying it correctly, Imogen, the Amergin, one of the first poet, where he is saying that he is a part of everything. It's. Do you remember it?
I don't remember the lines of it.
I know it is, but it's "I am the salmon, and I am the sunlight, and the sunbeam," and he goes through every single thing, and I know it's been said it's like an invocation.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the first Irish poem.
Right, the first Irish poem. Yeah. And I love it that it's saying it's an invocation, and it's like, I wonder if that's really what poems were invocations. And it's like, how do we have that invocation of our own death? you know? And I think that that's where we need to come. I think John O'Donoghue speaks about it, that we need to befriend our death. Befriend our death. So, well, since we're on poems, there is something here, a quote of W.B. Yeats that I would like to bring forward and then ask you how that is in the light of your own life. He writes, "One loses as one grows older something of the lightness of one's dreams. One begins to take life up in both hands and to care more for the fruit than the flower." I'll say it again. One loses as one grows older something of the lightness of one's dreams. One begins to take life up in both hands and to care more for the fruit than the flower. What does that invoke within you in regarding your life and regarding the journey towards death?
I see life as a process, of course. And it's just, I see it now in the gardens, played out, lived out in front of me in the flowers, in the plants that grow, watching them grow, and then sending out a stalk, and sending out a flower, and maybe a fruit. And that's the final part of this particular journey. And then there's a letting go. It has to go for this year, and the seed starts again. So to me, that's the whole lesson of life, that you spread seeds, you sow seeds by what you do and who you are, and how you feel and how you express yourself. And they produce fruit. And sometimes the seeds are maybe seeds of suffering. They say the seeds of life are planted in joy and happiness, and then also in suffering. So there's something suffering. There's something about letting go that's very precious, I think. You have to let go. You feel it in your body. Your body tells you that you're letting go now. You have to let go. And then your mind begins to accept that. I think that's the process, a natural process. And when you know it's natural and everything else is doing the same, for me that's very comforting. I think Yeats was talking about that. There's a sadness, of course, in growing old and letting go. But there is also a letting go to the future, into something new again, into a new seed that will grow. So all that is very comforting. Nothing comes to an end. Nothing comes to a complete end. It comes to maybe a conclusion of this particular phase, and then it begins again. And that's the wonderful thing about it. And I think we're part of that ongoing process. I understand that now, that life is a series of transformative episodes that's going through one single process. It's a single process that's going through a sequence of transformative episodes. That's what the universe story says. So I think that's very comforting, and we're not here to do the whole thing. We're here to do our part and to do our best, and if we put our best into it, I think that will be that's our reward. That's our fulfillment. That's our fullness. I didn't answer the question.
No, I think you did. And that's the beauty, I think, of conversation. You just let it go where it's going to go. I'm happy with that.
Sometimes my mind is a bit slow now, and I don't really, hear the question and hold it.
It's difficult to hold it. Yeah. But I love the way you brought up that sense, too, of the letting go. The need to let go. And I think that's how we can begin to prepare ourselves to die now, no matter how old we are, by letting go of the small things in life, the large things in life. I often hear people, they say to me, "Oh, I'm not afraid of dying," but they are so afraid of change. And I'm like, okay, death is really the mother of all change. So I think there's going to be a lot of letting go. And on that, what has fascinated me is the story of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who we know, did wonderful things to bring death and dying into the public conversation, into public life, and really brought it so that people were talking about dying. Because we were in the West, it's the fear and nobody wants to talk about it.
Don't use a word even. We can't talk about passing.
Right. Yes, death is too final or something. What is interesting about her life is that she began her work by not accepting. She was not accepting what the hospitals were doing. She was not accepting how they were teaching people to look after the dying patients. She brought in new programs. So her whole premise of life was not accepting the norm. But what happened was when she was dying, she had a very long, difficult 9-year process of dying through a series of strokes. And she said, those people who know my work will know that I speak, that it's a wondrous, sacred event, and it's something that we can fully enter into. But she said, those people who know me personally know that I am being persecuted in my own death. And she said, why? Because I cannot accept. She was unable to accept the breaking down of her body. She was unable to accept that it was taking so long. In fact, she used to kind of, shake her fist at God and say, why are you procrastinating? Like, let me die. And so it was really drawn out. And she would actually say, she actually wrote, if I surrendered, if I really let go and allowed it to be, she said, I would probably die tomorrow. But she said, I can't. And she couldn't let go. So it was a very long, difficult time. And what fascinates me, though, was here's that sort of sense of the blessing and the curse, because that non-acceptance is what really propelled her and allowed her to move things in life. But then it became her curse because she couldn't accept the actual process of her own dying. So my question for you is, what is the gift you feel that you've been given personally for your work in the world? And can you see how you're being asked to give it up, that gift? How it might be turning, or how you think you might be in the future asked to give up that gift? So looking at it, from both sides.
Well, I was brought up as an Irish Catholic, and the fear of God, I think, was very prominent in my life, as it wasn't the life of everyone at that particular time. We were ruled by fear, in a sense, and we were very obedient and very faithful and very true to God, I think, through that process. Later on, much later on, I came to understand that God is a God of love. But what helped me to understand this was my understanding of the universe. I had a very narrow idea of God when I was young. It was almost confined to the parish or the part of the country that I lived in at that time. But then as I into middle years, I first heard of this universe story and heard that, in fact, the universe is 13.7 billion years old, and that it's going through a process. It's going through a process going on for billions of years. Life emerged maybe 4 to 5 billion years ago, and it has emerged into where it is now. So that would be hugely comfortable to me, that everything is one. This is what the scientists say. We all come from the one source. We all come from the energy that created the universe. We are of the fire that fashioned the galaxies. That we are all one. And I then, in my religious belief then, I always loved the story of Jesus and, the Last Supper, I suppose, the Last Testament, the last will and testament, the last will and his last words. And one of the prayers in it was that they all may be one. They all may be one. And I thought for a long time, with my narrow view of life, that he was praying that all of us would be Catholics, because the Catholics are the best. But now I understand that it is much bigger than that. He's praying that all may be one. And that is all people and all things and all animals, all creatures, all of life. And God, but the reason is because God is one. God is one. So I'm not going to be taken out as an individual. I don't believe I will, by God, God, the one. I think God will receive me into something much bigger than that, into a community. And there I will be, if I'm going to be judged, I will be judged within a kind of a community context. What did you do for the community? What did you do for others? What did you do for yourself in the process, as you grew into others? Because growing into others and growing into community is growing into me. And that's where you are now. You have reached another stage of that, which is in communion with. In communion, we're in communion. And the great saying was, we are a communion of subjects. Thomas Berry said that. We're a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. We are a communion of subjects, all of us together, in God. And that's wonderful belief I have, and Christians have, is that we, as John expressed it, you are in God, and God. Those who believe in God believe. Those who believe in love believe in God. Lives in God, live in God, and God lives in them. I think if we believed that, if we really believed that, I think it would change everything. Those who live in love live in God, and God lives in them. So really it is about trying to live in love. And I think I have entered into that phase in the latter part of my life. And that's a huge comfort. I don't have any fear of God. I look forward to the loving revelation, the fullness of the revelation of God, which will be something more than I've ever imagined or couldn't possibly put into words. But I think that I feel that very comforting. So that's where I am, but it has been a process that has gone on through my life. And I think the more I understood and the more I began to think of God in a bigger scale, the more I grew, the more I developed as a person, and the more human I became, and the more the more connected I became. And I think the great enlightenment now is there is no separation. There is no separation in God. So why should there be separation here? Or why should we define ourselves by our separation? We define ourselves by our communion, by our oneness. And if we believe that, well, we'll see. We don't know. I'll find out, as the person says, I'll find out soon enough, and I won't. It seems I won't be able to communicate back directly to you, but that's okay. If I get there, I believe I'll get there, and I believe that there will be something more. I've been always part of my belief and my tradition. I'm not going to give up that.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Coming into the communion, and so it comes back, I think, to what you said right at the beginning, that we're already here. We're already here. So whether we're alive in this body, or whether we're in another form or dimensional reality, it's the same communion. The same communion.
As Thomas Merton said, the gates of heaven are everywhere.
The gates of heaven are everywhere.
Not one big gate, a big golden gate, just small gates.
Yeah.
That will be reopening and closing, and it's letting us in and out.
Beautiful.
There's one more poem. I mean, I know that you can cut out all this, and
No, go ahead, please.
but just you may know the Wayfarer. It was written by Patrick Pearse, one of the signatories of the proclamation in 1916. He was executed, of course, for his part in that, and he's supposed to have written this poem the night before he died, and so there's a great sadness in it. And there's an expression of joy in it as well, which I think, but he expressed it like this. So I'm only just saying this is you can put this in or not. And I probably won't remember all the words. It said, "The beauty of the world hath made me sad, this beauty that shall pass. Sometimes my heart had shaken with great joy to see a leaping squirrel in a tree, or a red ladybird upon a stalk, or little rabbits in a field at evening, lit by a slanting sun, or some green hill where shadows passed by, some quiet hill where mountainy man had sown and soon would reap, close to the gates of heaven, or children with bare feet on the sands of some ebb sea, or playing in the streets of little towns in Connacht. Things bright and beautiful, things young and happy. And then my heart had told me, these will pass and change and die and be no more. Things young and things bright and green, things young and happy. And I went on my way, sorrowful." Yeah. But he was dying. He was going to die the next morning. He was going to be shot, and so that was. But it evoked some maybe sad thoughts in him, but also maybe some hopeful thoughts. Or he remembered some of the joys he experienced in life.
Yeah, beautiful. I know Yeats said, "Hope and memory come together and make art." Yeah, so that this poetry, this art, feels to me there's in that poem he's speaking of the beautiful hope and beauty of the world, and the memory, and also then the actual reality of his life and what was the imminent ending. Yeah. Because isn't that it? Life is both the beautiful and the tragic. And I think that if we really can truly not only believe that, but know that, to truly know that, then life is not painful. No. Really, the pain is, we're always saying something should be something other. Right? Like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. This is so painful because I should already be dead. This is something other. It's happening. And that's the pain. That's the pain. So it's... And yet there is that eternal sense of the hope, I think, in humanity for that beauty of life to somehow just keep going. But that brings me actually to just a few lines of this poem, and it's the woman of Beara, the old woman of Beara, and the Cailleach. And it's just, the old woman of Beara am I, who once was beautiful. Now all I know is how to die. I'll do it well. And I love this translation by Brendan Kennelly. It's a beautiful translation. It feels to me he really goes deep into the Cailleach, and she is saying, yeah, I know how to die, and I know how to do it well, And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing for all of us to be able to say, I know how to die, and I will do it well. Yeah. So, what, do you want to say something on that?
Well, I just know that when I think I'm 82 years of age, so my life is coming to an end. I accept that completely. Because my body is telling me that anyway. But I would hope that when I'm dying, that people will leave me alone. That they won't be kind of repeating prayers, saying prayers that are not coming maybe totally from the heart, just trying to keep me happy or something. I would prefer silence. I would prefer some soft music, and maybe some Irish music. Because I come from a traditional part of the country where the music speaks very much from the soul. A neighbour of mine is Martin Hayes, who's a great fiddler.
I know Martin.
Do you?
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're from East Clare?
I'm from East Clare, just across the fields from him.
Oh my gosh, I know Martin well.
Do you? He's a really beautiful soul.
Wonderful soul.
Yeah, but I would love maybe to have a little bit of Martin's music playing when I'm passing away. And looking forward to that, because his music speaks from the very soul, not just from his own soul, but from the soul of the land and from the soul of the place, and from the soul, the great soul, which is beyond, which is in everything. Everything has a soul, and he includes that. I think he feels it and he expresses it. So rather than to be just going through maybe repetitive type of prayers that don't really come from the full being of the person, just to be present and to be silent and to watch that moment when somebody passes away, I think is very profound. And I do remember a colleague of mine once, and he was dying, and he had asked the nurse to tell him, to whisper in his ear. He was unconscious, he seemed to be unconscious, but he had asked her. He was a very practical man, he had everything organised to the last minute, and he'd asked the nurse, now when I'm going, just whisper in my ear, you're going now. He just wanted to be sure that he was on his way. And that was very moving. We didn't have to be praying. We just had to watch this drama unfolding of his departure. And he wanted to have a woman whisper in his ear, your time is coming on. Goodbye. It was lovely.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think that is so important. The sacred presence. Because when somebody is dying, they've already had forays in and out. They're going into the other dimension and coming back, going in and coming back. There's no room for anything of falsity. There's only room for that sacred presence. And I think important for caregivers to know this and not to crowd, but to actually give more space, because where the dying person is going is into an expansiveness. So we don't want to constrict that. And and I just love that you know Martin. I mean, his music has been. His music takes me into my sacred presence.
It's amazing.
It is, because he's in his sacred presence when he's playing, and the presence of everything. So
I just know his family. I knew his grandfather, his grandmother, his father, his mother, his brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. They were neighbours. They were neighbours of mine, and his father was a fiddler too, a musician. And Martin learned it from him, I'm sure. Yeah. But he learned it from the neighbours as well. Yeah. So he's a very special soul. He is
indeed, and I shall be delighted to let him know that you and I have met. He'll be.
I might just give you I have a poem that was written here. It was written here in the house, and I was playing Martin's music. And this man was here. He's a poet. He's not a very well-known poet, but he's a good poet. And he wrote this afterwards. He said, and the heading was on listening to Martin Hayes playing the barn dance, I think, in Glendalough. And just it brought back a whole lot of spirits, and they were all dancing down these valleys, listening to his music. So it's a beautiful poem, and if I can find it, I'll
love to
give you a copy of it.
Absolutely.
And when you meet him next, you can actually hand it on to him.
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Will you meet him again?
Oh, I hope so. We're waiting to see if he will come to Bantry to the Masters of Tradition. tradition.
Sure,
Next month.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not sure.
Yeah, he hasn't been over for a year now or more.
I know. So, well, listen, I'm delighted, and I want to thank you so much for your time. I know that as you are journeying into your, later years, that I'm sure you are into eternity. There we go. That's better than later years. As you're traveling into eternity, I'm sure you're aware of just how precious time is. I remember John O'Donoghue, somebody asking him, not too long before his death, asking him, what is haunting you? What is haunting you right now? And John said that the sands of time are trickling and going by so fast. And there was this haunting in his soul that life was going by very, very fast. And he almost couldn't kind of grasp what the essence of that. And he died soon after. So a beautiful, I guess, intuitive knowing of his time on this earth was coming to a close. But as we know, he's with us. Yeah. He's with us for sure, with not only through his poetry but through his spirit. So so thank you so much, and I wish for you and for all the listeners that we may learn to die well now in life through letting go whenever we are given the opportunity. And may we flow with the sacred waters of life and death and life again. So I invite you to go to my website, megandon.life, to see courses offered, the books Feminine Courage, Meditations with Teresa of Avila, Sacred Companion, Sacred Community, and book on death and dying is on the way. And also tierman.ie to learn more about the Spirituality Center here in Glendalough, which is a beautiful place to come and be. So we'll be putting the website on the page. And please tune in for the first and third Thursday of the month for more on Soulful Thoughts from Ireland. Be well, be strong, and gentle of heart. Slán.